like the typical, dev starting their first indie, how much money they can make, or what's the business plan or the trajectory of the studio, not even in their purview. Like, they don't even think about it, right? They just want to make, a good game.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 71 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. I am your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby Girl, who's in my lap, Pumpkin, who's taking a nap over there, and of course, every week we have a special guest. This week's guest is specialer than the last, Garrett Davis. Welcome back. I see you've put your QR codes on. You don't have to put your name. I got your name on there, but that's up to you.
Okay, nice.
But Garrett and I work together on the ShawneeXP Accelerator. We've done stuff here and there in the entrepreneur space for over a decade now because we're getting old. Garrett, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So before we get started, a couple quick things. A reminder that GDEX is less than 2 months away. I think we're at like 56 days. So tickets are available. We still have some spaces for exhibitors, and we're still getting the schedule organized. So if you're interested in speaking, that might be available. But thegdex.com, GDEX. So come and join us in lovely Columbus, Ohio. And then, excuse me, sorry, choking on something. And then we also theoretically are going to have some updates about the accelerator and the incubator in the next coming weeks. So keep an eye open for that, or an ear, or whatever you're keeping open, keep open. And then just for fun, I always like to, whenever I see something interesting floating around for those who are kind of watching live and stuff. So the Samsung 9100 SSD, the Pro SSD, is discounted on Prime Day right now. So if you need an extra SSD card, particularly for like your PS5, this is a pretty good one. So I just got this. This is off of GameSpot, but you should be able to find it on the Amazon sales. And then I thought this was kind of fun, just to kick us off. Apparently the new Pope plays video games. He plays Wordle and Words with Friends. He's known to play those games. And so this is the first Pope that apparently regularly plays any kind of games. This is from Kotaku, Zach Zwiesen. And this is an older article, but I had missed it. So I just thought it was kind of fun to throw it up there. So maybe you can go do your Words with Friends with the Pope.
We are inevitable, Chris. We are inevitable. Everyone will be a gamer on this planet before we're done.
Totally. And a reminder along those lines that I am running for U.S. Senate in Ohio in 2026. So you can follow me at Volpe for America on all the social medias, which I believe would make me the first gaming senator. So I would be the first gamer senator.
I don't know about that. I actually know AOC's in the house. Sorry.
Yeah, AOC's. Yep. I think there's, I mean, there's probably like, I don't know, you've got like, like John Ossoff is pretty young. I think he's roughly my age. He might play some games, but as far as I know, I'm also playing on my Volpe for America Twitch and YouTube. I'm playing Fallout 4 right now, rebuilding the wasteland, connecting people, bringing them together. So that could be fun if you want to come and hang out and just talk, ask questions and whatever. So that's kind of my little community stuff for the beginning. Garrett, how you doing, man? It's been a while since.
Pretty good, Chris. Show. Yeah, pretty good. Plugging away at the accelerator program here in sunny Portsmouth, Ohio, just down south from Columbus. For all you nerds out there, we've been helping support the teams. We did a big pitch day. Right in March, had 6 major publishers fly into Columbus the week after GDC. Showed them around Columbus for a few days. Made the trip down south. Fed them all a bunch of steak, and our teams pitched to them right here at Shawnee State University. Got some awesome feedback. Spent 4 days having folks from Devolver Digital, Agora Gaming Partners. Run around Portsmouth and interact with the teams, and now they're busy at work meeting with publishers, and making a go of it.
Making a go indeed, man. It's rough times in the industry. We talked last week. I posted to you, but you saw the layoffs from Xbox. Nearly 10,000 layoffs from Xbox, which I've been kind of following. May impact John Romero's new project. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's rough goings all around right
Four
now.
studios shut down, and they're reporting a 15% bump in profits over last year, and still laid off 9,500 people. It's wild.
Yeah, so that is definitely something that kind of pisses me off. We're seeing this just, if you want to call it, blanket level of greed. You can refer to that. I think that it's just showing. I think a lot about like messaging that's sent when you make decisions, and a lot of it's built on trust. And if people trust you, then decisions that are being made, you can understand like, oh, hard decisions had to be made. Didn't really want to do it, but yeah, I mean, you're seeing Xbox is doing pretty well financially. I know their console sales are not as where they want them to be. PlayStation's kind of killing it right now. But yeah, I find it really, to be blunt, like, how are we as just normal people supposed to fucking trust any of these companies, any of our employers, right? And I think it creates this incentive where employees, and maybe we're naive. I mean, I'm a little bit like, I remember when you used to work at a place and you'd kind of feel like they would have your back, and yeah, maybe you'd get fired, sure, but like, it just seems like nowadays we're all just chum in the water. And if that's the case, like, there's no incentive for employees to like go the extra mile or do all this extra work and work all these like super long hours and stuff, like, which you'd argue we shouldn't be doing anyway. But yeah, what's the incentive for the employee to like give more to the company if they can just be kicked to the friggin' curb at any second?
They're loyal to shareholders now. I mean, we live in a world where a big number must continue to go up no matter what, and quarterly profits can never be down, and it doesn't really matter how profitable you are. They're shareholders that gave you money yesterday, so you have to make more money today than you did yesterday, and you got to be more profitable. And even though they're up, you're going to continue to see, I think, layoffs like this, which just leads us into the future of, I think this is going to become more of an indie renaissance in the games industry, moving forward, in the next few years, because they're the ones that are going to be able to really innovate. The ability to launch a game anywhere on the planet now, and be able to reach the same audience as Call of Duty. I think is going to lead to a real kind of renaissance in the indie space, particularly as like these bigger pieces of IP just get more and more and more expensive. I think you're going to see fewer AAA games come out. AA is probably going to go away at this point, and it's going to leave a lot of room for the indies that can figure out how to get a game out there. At least that's our hope down here at ShawneeXP.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, that opens up the next question, though, and this is what we've seen in our work, is that I saw this in the board game space before the video game space, but it's a publisher's market right now. And so you've got a bazillion indie companies that are just fighting over small amounts of money. I mean, even when we were doing, we being you and I, when we were working on getting some of the publisher stuff organized for the cohort, it is amazing. It probably shouldn't be surprising, but it is amazing how bad some of the publishing deals are out there, like the terrible deals. And that's my worry, is like, as these folks, I mean, first of all, they're losing their jobs, right? They're losing their livelihoods. Even if they switch to an indie development, an indie studio, you're still looking at 2 years before a product's out. And, so that's 2 years of, how do you support your family? How do you bring in income? What publisher is going to give you the money? I mean, you're lucky to get, we've told our teams, I mean, you're lucky to get $50,000 to $100,000 from a publisher these days. And that's not $100,000. Let's say you have a team of 2 or 3 people. $100,000's not going to last you a year, let alone 2 years.
I mean, we've got to compete with the rest of the world now. I mean, we spent the last 20 years building up co-development studios around the world, and then in the pursuit of shareholder profits for AAA studios. And the side effect of that is the rest of the world's gotten really good at making video games, and they're not building it in LA, they're not building it in Seattle, they're not building it in New York and Boston and Vancouver, where houses are $1.4 million on average, right? So we're going to have to be able to start competing for investment dollars for games that can just upload to Steam just fine down in Brazil and Mexico. And there's extremely talented people that have been building games, I think, globally, and we're going to have to figure out how to compete, on a profit scale with those folks. Portsmouth, Ohio is very cheap. Ohio in general, guys, you gotta start moving to Ohio. Get in on this
Sure.
ground floor of the game development ecosystem here.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to industry. I mean, actually, this is society wide. I think a lot of us are just gonna have to just alter our perceptions of the world and our expectations. Actually, this is sort of a side thing, but one of our local news channels, our news like online newspapers, did a little thing about me for the Senate, and I was looking at all the comments, and I was kind of just putting comments in there, and I was intentionally responding to a lot of comments. You could tell these people didn't even read the article, right? And it was just like, vote red no matter what kind of things. I'm running as a Democrat, just in case you're unaware. And I would intentionally respond to the red ones. And I was like, hey, give me a shot. You might be surprised. You never know, right? And I'd say probably more than half, maybe 75% of the people that chose to respond were pretty snide. And it was just like, who knows if they're even bots, right? Like, I'm not worried too much about it. But I got into an interesting conversation with this guy. He pinged me through direct message. His thing was guns and gun rights and stuff. But we had a really interesting 2-3 day conversation that ended. It was super pleasant. Like it ended really well. But one of the things I was kind of talking to him was like, we are all going to have to give a little bit here, right? We are all going to have to reset our expectations. Now, why I'm bringing it up with this is that we, being like just us normal folks, have been readjusting our expectations for a long time. We're going to start needing the people in power, the corporations are going to need to start readjusting their expectations. And to your point earlier, maybe that means that you find an 8% year over year profitability instead of a 10%. And then that 2% can help keep staff online. I also personally think we're going to need to move towards things like universal healthcare, removing the costs of education, because it's just here in America over the past, pretty much my lifetime, the expectations, the burdens that used to be held by the government, by corporations, are being shifted onto us, right? Like, this is fucking crazy, but there used to be a time where you would go train at a company, they would pay you for the training and then hire you afterwards. Now we're paying these exorbitant higher educational fees and vocational training fees that, as soon as you graduate, put you in a tremendous amount of debt, tens of thousands, if not over $100,000 in debt, on the off chance you're going to get a job. There's not even a guarantee of a job. So all of this burden is being shifted onto us. And whether you're applying that to society or you're applying it to the games industry, like, that cannot sustain. Like, the workers are your foundation. You can AI me all you want until you're fucking blue in the face, but AI is not building the next Call of Duty. It's just not. So,
no. And it puts workers in a extremely difficult spot. I mean, you're coming out of school, you went to Full Sail or Ohio State or some big college. You're gonna come out of school now with over $100,000 in debt, and entry level jobs. So I was just looking over at Rockstar, it's 70 grand a year, and that's on site in San Diego. That's very close to the poverty line. Out in California.
Our colleague,
and Howard.
our colleague, just real fast, I won't mention his name, who works at Rockstar. They made him move as part of the deal. He had to move to New York, like New York City. And yeah,
Mhm.
he was getting paid. I don't know exactly, but maybe something in like 70, 80 grand range.
Mhm.
In New York City, like, come on. And he was mentioning in a conversation we had at GDEX, he was like, I don't really go out or anything because it's just his money is just
Can't afford
absorbed
to.
by his housing and food.
Yep. Yep. And if the industry trends are just gonna, force these large, gaming conglomerates to generate more profits, there's only a few ways they can do that. And that's either, find more gamers and generate more profit, but they're already generating insane amounts of profit, right? $257 billion is what they're planning on bringing into this industry, I think, this year. Um, so the only other way to do that is to drive down your cost of doing business, which is paying folks less. And it's very difficult to get by even as an experienced dev in some of these places now. Houses are just too expensive, and they're trying to build games in the most expensive place in the world. So they're going to have to leave these major metropolitan areas and start building games and figuring out a different way. Or I think we're at a real danger of a lot of the investment, the publishing dollars, the VC dollars in games leaving the United States and going other places. I mean, how many publishers did we hear from, as they came down to Portsmouth, Ohio, that said, we don't really look at games in the U.S. because there's a staple that or a stigma that they're just going to be too expensive for us to publish when there's 149 other pitch decks we got today,
Yeah.
with games that have the same um, marketability and the that cost a tenth the price.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your risk ratio is significantly different in those. And I also think, like, again, without sort of sounding too political here, when you're
You are running for Senate, so that's probably okay.
I mean, that's the thing is, like, I'm running for Senate, but like I'm not a politician. I'm just saying shit, right?
Right.
But like nowadays, everything has to be some kind of political thing. But when you disalign the incentives like this, when your workers' incentives are different than the company's incentives, which are different than the government's incentives, it can create this cascading problem that will begin to sort of, it builds on itself and leads to sort of this kind of collapse. And I think that's going to be really problematic in the industry. And I mean, we're already we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Death Stranding 2, where I feel like that's one of the few games that's like, Kojima is one of the few people that's willing to get weird and do weird ideas at a AAA level. Uh, you just don't see, dude. When we were growing up in, like, I know this is old man talk here, but when we were growing up in like the '90s, particularly on PlayStation, there were all sorts of weird games that came out, just these weird
Oh yeah.
ideas, and some of them grew into like these other franchises. Others kind of, never really. I mean, I think it was last week we were talking about Seaman. Do you remember that Dreamcast game? Like, what the hell was that? That thing's awesome. One of my favorite games was, it called like IQ or Haiku, I think, and it was just like this puzzle game where you try not to get crushed by blocks. Like, that was really cool. But right now, a lot of those ideas are in the indie space because it's first of all, I think a little bit of it's like when you're a new developer, like starting out, you kind of don't know. You make a lot of weird decisions because you don't know what you should be doing, and it just ends up,
Yep.
in a lot of cool ways sometimes.
And
But
I like this is so weird from the indie space, coming from like the typical Silicon Valley, like tech bro trying to build a startup. They're thinking about how they can exit from like day one, right? And how they can IPO, who's going to buy them, how much money they can make. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on like the typical dev starting their first indie, how much money they can make, or what's the business plan or the trajectory of the studio, not even in their purview. Like, they don't even think about it, right? They just want to make a good game.
mhm. Well,
I mean,
I
you
th-
start talking to them about like exiting, or who would buy your studio, IPO, and they're like, why would I ever sell my studio? Oh my god, I'm making games, like I want to do this for the next 30 years, like I would never sell it, right?
yeah. I mean, I have no intention of selling Multivarious. I mean, it would have to be a really good deal. for me to sell multivarious. But yeah, I think that we've talked about this before over drinks many times, but the business model, if you want to call it that, of investing isn't really aligned with games development, more or less. And I think it can also be very, very detrimental because they're like, yeah, I want to scale something up. I want to be able to, 5 to 10x my investment in 3 to 5 years, get going. And you're like, well, I mean, it's going to take us 3 to 5 years to make the first game, and then the next question is always like, can it be a franchise? Everything has to be a franchise, right?
Mhm.
We can't just have a cool idea that sells well. It's got to build this thing, and then you get to franchise fatigue and all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah, I think ultimately the investment world. Well, first of all, as a side note, I think it's kind of funny, like that you and I have these conversations because both you and I are. We've had our feet in the investment space a lot, and I've had a lot of conversations with investors that speak the way that you just spoke. And I was just like, dude, like it's just not going to work in games this way. It just doesn't work. And I think that's a good thing, to be honest. Also, I think that people tend to forget that like there is so much money, so much institutional and old money in Silicon Valley that they can just piss it away. Like for them, a 10, 20, $50 million loss, yeah, they don't want to lose money, but that's just built into their ledger, right?
Yep.
In Ohio, a $50 million loss is a big deal, and so it's just the economies of scale are just foundationally different, and that makes it difficult because besides the fact that there's really no institutional investing in the video game industry here in Ohio to begin with, the few projects that do get invested in, it's like the due diligence and everything is just like so high, and they ask you questions where it's like, first of all, again, this is just me talking. Take it for what it's worth. I think that 80 to 90% of investors don't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's proven out in the research. Like financial planners, like for your stocks and your retirement portfolios, 80% of them fail to beat an S&P 500 index fund, which is just sort of like the market. So if 80% of your industry fails to if you would have just put money in an index fund and walked away and done nothing, you would have been better than hiring a financial planner, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. I think
go ahead.
I just saw the industry report on most VC funds over the last 5 years, and on average they return 0.9% of the money they raised in the fund, right? So
There
they're
is a real this sounds, I'll just say how it is. There is a real ego check that goes on in a lot of these circles where you have people who have become well off through maybe a business that they made. Sometimes you'll see high net worth individuals like doctors and lawyers who are very, very successful. And in their mind, they view the success of, let's say being a doctor, and they're like, I'm really super smart and whatever. And they're probably told they're super smart all the time. And they're like, I'm going to start investing. And they don't realize, first of all, it's a completely separate skill set, like investing and helping build businesses compared to being a physician. The reality is most doctors do not understand how their own industry runs on a business level. So take that for what it's worth. But there is a little bit of an ego thing there where people jump in and they throw in money thinking that they can never be wrong. And then, of course, Wall Street's got all sorts of BS risk things that go on, which is where you get things like the financial collapse of 2008. But yeah, I think the larger point here is that our incentives are not aligned in all of these different, verticals, whatever you want to call them. And that is resulting in just an incredible amount of layoffs and pain for the people producing the products.
Yeah, because people that didn't understand how this industry functions started getting into it, with their dollars. People who didn't traditionally invest in games, a lot of VCs over COVID. The industry was exploding. It's growing at a 20 to 30% rate. I want to invest in me some games, and I think we're paying for a lot of that now. Whenever the industry wasn't able to maintain a 30% growth rate over the next 10 years, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Right.
You want to know
And
something
so we've
something that's wild too is as I get older, you keep thinking about like we just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Like we had this issue during the Atari days. If you remember, most people won't know, but Ray Kasser, I believe, Kassar, he ran Atari for a while, and he came from the textiles industry. And for if you textiles, fabrics, clothing, whatnot, which is a very streamlined, step A, step B, step C. Like that's how you make textiles and clothing. That is not how video games work. So one of the big things that impacted Atari in those early days, 5 years ago, is the same kind of problems we're having now, which is people are coming in trying to streamline. I'm all for efficiencies and whatnot, but you need to be making sure that the efficiencies are helping you with the business and production so that the creatives can be even more creative in their efforts and they're not getting bogged down. Like that's what a really good producer does, right? They see the problems coming down the road and they start kind of navigating them to allow the creatives to be more effective and efficient at it. And every company is going to have their own issues, right? Like there's always going to be deadlines. Not everyone can be a rock star and spend 13 years working on a game, right? Like there's going to be some sort of schedule that you have to adhere to, right?
I mean, do you see that trend kind of, that middle developer that's spending $50 million on a game and trying to get it out in 3 to 4 years, like becomes more rare, and you start seeing these giant, rock star billion-dollar games, and then indies that are trying to get games out every 0.8 2 years on 300 to 400 to 500,000, and trying to make like a small business and catch fire out of that, and like growing at the speed of cash. Like that's kind of how I see this dichotomy like moving forward,
Sure.
into the future. And my hope is that kind of takes the industry back a little bit for the creatives. But these indies, it's going to be really tough getting that first game off the ground and becoming
Totally.
sustainable, because you're going to have to get to vertical slice essentially before anybody will even look at giving you publishing dollars. So you're going to have to fund this thing either yourself or go through projects like ours. So I'm hoping these early stage investors can start getting some support to these folks, because 9,500 devs just got laid off at Microsoft. Like, what do you think all these folks are doing? Think they're going to stop making games? Or you think they're getting teams of 3 to 5 together and start working on projects to go out and pitch them right now?
I'm sure it's a combination of both, and unfortunately the money is just not there. So there's people, we have friends and colleagues that through circumstances and saving and whatnot are able to spend a year or two because they have the savings to work on that. But that is not the case for most people. Yeah. What's weird is like this really isn't any different than, and I think this is kind of what's sad about society in general, is this isn't any different than like the kind of hyper capitalist monopoly issues that we were facing 100 years ago, right? And we're doing trust busting and things like that. And it's just sad that like we have to keep going over the same ground again. Like it'd be one thing if it's like, oh, here's a whole new set of problems, let's navigate it, which AI kind of represents, right? It's not there yet, but AI does represent like we're going to need to figure out how to live in a world where AI can do 30 or 40% of our basic jobs, right? Okay, that's like a something coming down the road we have to figure out, but like we shouldn't have to be. It's like we're in our bus and then someone just picked our bus up and took us like 300 miles back and was like, all right, have fun. Oh, by the way, we're not refilling your gas tank. And you're like, well, shit. Like it's so unnecessary to be in this position. And I think that, to be honest, we may have talked about this on the show before, but there is a clear, whatever you want to call it, example or whatever, that these companies have been taking advantage of us universally, but in the games industry in particular, because pretty much everyone that's in video games particularly like programmers and engineers, could be doing a job in another sector and getting paid way better. But we
Hmm.
do this because we love video games and we love being
Yep.
creative and we love telling stories and creating experiences. And these large companies have been able to take advantage of that love in a way that we kind of have been like, it's been like a tenuous armistice where we've just been like, okay, we know you're taking advantage of us a little bit, but we get to do what we love, so we're not going to complain too much. I think we may have passed the point where, we're all just like, all right, it's on now. You know, you
Yep.
you you broke the truce.
Yep. Yep. And they decided to put their headquarters right next to Google and Amazon, and so now you're as a rock star engineer, senior engineer is fighting for a house with a senior engineer at Google, and like a tier 9 engineer at Google makes like $900,000 a year, right? So it's just for you to survive, like the rest of the tech ecosystem around you and the businesses around you have kind of, inflated the cost of making games because of where you're making
Yeah,
them. It's a weird, and I think we're just kind of coming to the end of that. I have to
yeah,
push ahead and pick something new.
yeah. Well, my thing has been for years in Ohio, where I'm like, because you mentioned just the requirements of getting to a point where you can get publishing money have become like crowdfunding I talk about, right? Like crowdfunding used to be a place where you go like, I've got this weird idea, throw it up there, get crowdfunded for 30 or 50 grand, and then you could start working on it. Now to even have a chance, you have to have a vertical slice. It's like you've got to have some maybe well-designed artwork or maybe a professional artist. You got to have good
Mhm.
voiceover work. Like just the time and the cost to get you to that point is it's insane. And I've said this to pretty much everyone in Ohio. I was like, look, if you want to build an industry, like if you really actually care about that, then you need to create a system that allows people to take the risk of leaving their job, starting a business, doing this thing. But if it fails, they don't become like financially destitute. Like
Mhm.
that's the kicker. And that's what Silicon Valley is able to do. These motherfuckers that are spending up hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, if that company collapses, they just move on to the next thing. There's no personal accountability for them. They don't have to pay back any of that money. They don't go broke. They don't lose their house, right? But if
Mhm.
you try to start spinning this up in Ohio and the Midwest, you're not going to get much support. So you're going to have to start dipping into your savings. Maybe you even take out a loan, which I highly suggest you don't do in the early stages. And then
Mhm.
if it doesn't work out or you can't complete it or whatever, you're still on the hook for that loan, man. Like the bank's not going to
Yep.
forgive that. And so
Yep.
if you really want to create an ecosystem, you need to remove as much of the risk as possible, which is what the incubator and the accelerator and things like GDEX are doing. Where it's like I can't build the game for you, but what I can do is connect you to a lawyer at a discounted rate that's going to help you with a lot of things. I can help you with your printing and your accounting. I mean, how we have a senior QA lead that is from who was at Naughty Dog, now is working at Studio Santa Monica, who helps these teams with like their quality assurance. Like, where else are you going to get a top tier QA person that is going to build you testing plans and show you how to go through and sit down and test the game and write reports with you? Like
Yep.
that's a huge. First of all, like you'd never even be able to find that person as an indie studio, right? Let alone pay for that person's time. And
Yep.
we cover all of that for them. So that's kind of what we're trying to do to remove all those barriers, which I think to your larger point is that's sort of the gift we can provide. And then of
Mhm.
course we've talked about being able to actually provide more and more real funding so that people
Right.
can work and still pay their rent and stuff, which is always
And I mean,
a,
that's why when we were kind of incepting this program, I focus on housing so much. Having, being able to provide free housing, to teams, no matter where you come from when you come to ShawneeXP was huge. I mean, that's most folks' biggest expense they're going to have is housing. So, knowing that you got housing covered, really makes our investment dollars, go further. And being able to have all the amazing toys we have down here, in the motion
Yeah.
capture lab, and computers, and the office space, because
Our network
your
it
your
alone is,
network alone's huge. But I mean, if you're going to go for the self-publishing route, which is what most people are doing now, you're living in San Francisco or New
yeah,
York or Boston or one of these places, you're going to have to work, a full-time job and work on this game on the side. And I think one of the worst things that can happen is you spend 5 or 6 years really slowing down your development time and working on a game that you find out nobody wants. 5 or 6 years down the line after you've been kind of grinding and pouring your dollars into it every day. So helping these teams like figure out what's viable early, being able to get them to work on the game full time, because speed right now is so valuable, and it's just very difficult to make significant progress when you're self-publishing, and all five team members that might be in different time zones. I mean, everybody's going to
sure.
remote starting this thing up now. I mean, how often did you struggle? When everybody's got side jobs trying to get that first game out the door.
Oh, dude, the first 2 or 3 years of Multivarious, we paid ourselves $24,000 a year. We were below the poverty line, and that's before taxes. So, yeah, it was a struggle. We were paying ourselves $2,000 a month. And hell, even now, like to be honest, we've entered because of what's going on at the federal level with like the tariffs and all the federal grants and stuff. A lot of our clients are healthcare and education, and both of those have seized up. They're not spending money, so I didn't pay myself last month. So I received zero salary last month, and so it's rough, and that's with us having we've got access to some opportunities that because we've been doing this since 2012. We got partners and stuff, but yeah, somebody else just getting started. It's rough stuff, man.
It's difficult. It's difficult. So that's why we're building the ecosystem that we're building. Giving folks that kind of speed run of how to run an efficient studio with some support and people that have been there, kind of in a low cost, resource
Yeah,
rich area. I think that's just going to be the way to kind of move forward.
sure. Yeah, I think you mentioned the speed. I think right now it's just like we're all feeling like we're running through mud, carrying this giant backpack, trying to move as fast as we can. Because if we don't move fast enough or we trip, we're just going to get engulfed. And I think a lot of people feel like that, and that is not the ingredient for a happy, healthy, productive society.
Hmm. Yep. I mean, we keep contact with our teams. We're still meeting with them every week now, because even if you get that first game out and it's successful, if you had a publisher, Steam's taking 30%, publisher might take half after that. You need to have enough money to get to your next vertical slice after your first successful game. Like, that's still a dangerous time for a
Mm-hmm.
studio, to be in, and they're going to need to be working on several projects, trying to get them to, a vertical slice stage, see what works, see what doesn't, move that quickly, because now you're back on a clock after your first game comes out, and you're hoping that one's successful and it's got a nice long tail that can, feed your team, in that time period. But you still got to be really diligent during that,
Yeah.
time period till you get that next game out, until you've got some nice annual kind of recurring revenue coming in,
Sure.
and then hopefully you'll never need a publisher again. But it's also much easier to do in a place like Ohio than it is in
Yeah.
San Francisco or New York.
I remember in my previous life when I was doing some businessy things, and I was the place I was working for. We were kind of looking at their like high level financials, and they barely had 30 days cash on hand. Most companies try to hit 90 days cash on hand, so you've got 3 months if something happens. The vast majority of even large corporations in this country maybe have 30 days cash on hand, if that. I think we are all in a very precarious spot right now. And, the best we can do, at least at the moment, besides voting for Chris Wolfe for Senate, of course, is helping to support each other and have each other's back and share contacts and help with whatever you can, because it's going to become increasingly more difficult. I think I just fear, I see it right now. Like GDEX's sponsorship this year is terrible. It's terrible. And like, again, the academic sector is a big sponsorship space for GDEX. Nobody wanted to even talk about it until the new budget came out on July 1st. And like, GDEX is in the first week end of September. And like, we've had some big corporations pull out on us, who have sponsored in the past and aren't able to sponsor now. And, it's tough, man. Like I just a little behind the curtains. I have not paid a single dollar for our deposit yet for GDEX because we haven't. And the convention center has been cool about it. But we are supposed to start paying like, I don't know, 45 days ago or something. But I'm waiting for all the sponsorships to come in because everybody's just super delayed this year. And for those, I've said this on the show before, but we sell about 80% of our tickets in the 7 to 10 days leading up to the show. So imagine trying to run an event, pay for promotion, pay for shirts, pay for tickets, buy people's hotels, buy people's flights, when 80% of your revenue comes in the week of the show. Yep. Right? And what happens if something happens and people don't come? Like there's no way to predict that. It's really, really challenging. Garrett, you and I are working on the XP Accelerator as a federally funded program. I think we've got at least 3 grants out right now, maybe 4.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard a peep from any of them.
Nope. Not the
We were supposed to know by April.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to hear before April, and we have not heard a single thing. So this federally funded program is just sort of sitting around waiting for I don't even know if anyone's looking at the emails or answering the phone calls over there, right?
I'm not sure if that team's employed there anymore, right?
Yeah.
With all these cuts. So yeah, you kind of wake up. We're
at
a time where we wake up and in the morning and look at Twitter and try to figure out, how the rest of our immediate future is going to go. So.
Yeah. But think about that. Just ignore the obvious like stupidity of like that's not a way to properly run a country or a business or anything. Just think about all of the wasted energy and time that is put into that. Because if you're getting paid and everything is on track, you can focus on building your product or delivering your service or whatever it is, customer service. But if you have to spend all this time just trying to even see if there's money coming or things are happening, like you're not building out your actual product. And so just take what we're doing at GDEX or at the ShawneeXP or the Sandbox Incubator and just expand that out to the rest of the country. Like the amount of lost productivity over the past 6 months is insane. And I think somebody should be held accountable for that, but that's just my take on it. You want to jump to something? All right, go ahead. Go ahead, finish.
No, please.
I was just saying, do you want to jump to something that a little less dour?
Yeah, sure.
So I just found this kind of interesting. I'm not.
Did you find some good news right now? Wow.
It's not good. Well, it's not good. It's just an interesting. It's a creative thing. Okay, so this is directly from Naughty Dog. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered now has a chronological version. So originally the game that came out and it's been around for 5 years, the story is told through a combination of like current time and flashbacks and like multiple character perspectives. They have now taken the game and put it into chronological order. And I don't know if that's like literally like from every cutscene going forward. But they just announced this like yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on, for me, I think the fact that they made those decisions from a storytelling perspective is a part of, it'd be like taking Pulp Fiction and relayering it in chronological, like the structure is the point, in my opinion.
Right.
But I'm just kind of curious. What are your thoughts on it? It's a separate mode. You don't have to do it, but
So they restructured the cutscenes to be in chronological order.
They
Is
restructured
that
the
what I'm thinking?
cutscenes and the gameplay.
Okay, interesting. I mean, yeah, that's gonna like kind of change the like foundation. Like you're almost playing a different game at that,
Yeah,
right? Or
I think
it's a
you are.
different story that they're telling.
Yeah.
Um, in that, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I always kind of go back to is it fun? Is it a cool experience? Did you just change something? Drastically enough for me to re-engage my time in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm debating. I got Fallout 4. I want to do Death Stranding 2. I may go back to Last of Us Part 2 and stream it for the campaign in this chronological way. But
Right.
I think the way that that story is told is important to how it works, and also I think the way that it plays with the concept of, um, yeah, there's just some parts of it that are just going to, I think, seem really disjointed because it's also playing with like the concepts of being a video game in a way. And so I thought that was really intriguing that they put in the time and the effort to do that, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't think of any other game like Mass Effect 3 went back and redid their ending due to a
Hmm.
lot of like really big player pushback. But can you think of another game that's gone back and restructured? Is there even a movie that's restructured it? Like maybe there is.
Not restructured it. I mean, think about from like just a dev standpoint, the cost of that. I mean, you
They
got to
do
be pretty
mention,
sure
yeah,
that you're going to get a return on your investment to sit around, a boardroom table or a conference table with the rest of the team and be like, we're going to spend a significant amount of money just reordering how this game works. And we all got to eat, so we need a return on that. So I mean they had to be pretty sure, right, that it was going to be received well,
mm-hmm.
or that's an interesting dice roll there.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big complaints about it from people who didn't like it was that it was the structure was bad. I fundamentally disagree. I think that there's a lot of media literacy issues that are coming into that. But uh, I don't know. It could be an intriguing way of looking at how the game works. But it seems to me like, I mean, did you ever see Memento, Christopher Nolan's first movie?
No.
So that movie, I would highly recommend watching it. But it's interspliced between black and white and color. And if I remember correctly, I think the black and white is going in reverse. So like each black and white segment is like before the previous black and white segment, and each color segment is after the previous color segment, and they all kind of
Right.
like meet together. Like that's what it reminds me of. If you were to take those and put them in chronological order, you don't have Memento. Like that's what the movie is, right?
Right.
But I'd recommend watching it. It's a pretty wild movie, particularly for his first film.
Do you think with the success of things like this and like the Oblivion like remaster, selling like hotcakes, that we're going to start seeing a whole lot more of these kind of remasters pop up because
Oh,
it's a
absolutely.
bit easier to do than build new IP. I mean, it's a safer kind of bet if you think you've got an audience for it to
Sure.
spend some time going in and re-upping things. You can create new DLC for it. I think what we're going to see a lot of older games get a facelift and come out near the near
Yeah.
future.
There's a lot of interesting videos around video game preservation,
Hmm.
and there's an interesting kind of challenge because, well, first of all, you have the technological challenge of like something that was created in the 90s or even the 2000s. Like from a software engineering perspective, it's not even in the same. In essence,
Yep.
you have to rebuild it from scratch, right? You can't
Yep.
copy and paste any code.
Yep.
Maybe you can
Wall
take,
classic.
yeah, you can take the art assets, like I guess sometimes, or like the audio. Um, but then there's also like I know a lot of people have been asking for a remake of Fallout 1 and 2, And I don't know if it's both games, but I think it's at least Fallout 1 where they're like, they lost the source code somewhere. Like they don't even have the source code, supposedly. And so at that point, you are making a brand new video game. If you don't have the source code, you're just starting completely over, right? Yeah, you understand how the game works or whatever, but I mean, that doesn't give you the code to actually make it work.
Right.
And they are working on a Fallout 3 remaster, supposedly. Um, Fallout 4 is 10 years old at this point, and
Yeah.
like,
The people that built it probably don't even work there anymore.
oh sure. So do you
Yeah,
consider
they're
like,
gone.
do people consider 10 years to be an old game? Does it need a rebuild, a remake? I don't know. I mean, I'm playing Fallout 4 now and I'm loving it. It's got its issues, but what Bethesda game doesn't? Uh,
Right.
so, but that's also something that's happened in the industry over the past, what would that be? Two cycles. I'm trying to think. Yeah. So the PS5 architecture and the PS4 architecture, for example, is very, very similar. The PS3 architecture is not. And
Mhm.
so that moving something from a PS3 game into PS4 or 5 requires either, you simulate it or you have to rebuild it. And so I think with the move in the like early 2010s, pretty much all of the console developers have been moving their consoles to pretty much be PCs, with
Mhm.
special, requirements or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think,
Xbox is getting Steam access.
yeah. So that's going to allow a lot of games to have a longer lifespan because, in the 80s and 90s, each console was its own beast, right? Super Nintendo could
Mhm.
not play Nintendo games. N64 could not play Super Nintendo games. GameCube could not play N64 games. And so every time you bought a new console, it was completely starting over from scratch. Of course, you have emulators and whatnot. But now, the PlayStation 5 can play PlayStation 4 games and it can emulate PS3 games through its, was it PlayStation Now? I think is what it used to be called Gaikai.
Mhm.
PlayStation 6 will most assuredly be able to play PS5 and 4 games. Like, I think keeping your library is so important now. And just simply that fact, I think, will keep games around longer.
Do you think the PlayStation exclusives are gonna be getting to PC, much slower, or like not at all now that Xbox has Steam access on it? I think that's gonna like mess with their like timeline for getting PlayStation exclusives like Ghost of Tsushima
No, I don't
to
think so.
PC.
I think that I don't know. We'll see how the Steam thing works with the Xbox, but the there are many, many rumors we've brought up on the show that this might be the last iteration of Xbox hardware the way we see it. And PlayStation right now is outselling Xbox like a bazillion.
Right.
So I don't think I don't think PlayStation even really needs this exclusivity to remain competitive. I think they're selling so well. Yeah, they're still going to do timed exclusives for sure, but no, I think they're going to start putting more and more stuff on Windows.
Yeah.
And probably keep it to a year of timed exclusivity at the maximum would be my guess. But who knows? World's a weird place, man. Who the fuck knows what's going on? Whew, man. Well, that was a wild conversation, Garrett. Thanks for
Yeah,
hopping
always
on the
is.
show. If there's any last things in chat, any questions they want to ask, but Garrett, any last things you want to talk about? Where can people get a hold of you if they want to follow you or anything?
You can just scan my little QR code here. Goes to my Popple page. So you can follow me there. LinkedIn. Get clued into some updates coming from ShawneeXP. Here soon. Watch our applications for the next cohort. So yeah, follow me and keep tuned, guys.
Sweet. Well, in that case, this has been episode 71 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Of course, you can follow us at the Sandbox.Space for the incubator. Follow us on the GDEX, thegdex.com, and all the social medias are at the GDEX. 2 months till GDEX, so come.
Get your booth now. They're
Yeah,
selling out like hotcakes.
visit us. Come hang out. Gonna have some really good speaking sessions and stuff like we always do, arcades. It's gonna be a good time. And then, of course, we are going to be doing this every week and on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. So you can be on live if you want to on our twitch.tv/the GDEX. And then, of course, we put it up on the Sandbox.Space YouTube channel as well. So, yeah, but that's been episode 71. So thank you all for watching. On behalf of Baby Pumpkin, our special guest Garrett, everybody in the chat, and myself, I want to thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.